going on in your life right now, and it probably is extremely overwhelming. And the hard part is that there are a lot of people, and a lot of people have a lot of opinions, and opinions are everywhere nowadays. And the hard part is when you have so many people's opinions, when you have so much input coming in, and you're trying to please everyone, you're trying to make exceptions for everybody, you're trying to make sure that you're doing everything that everybody wants, it just adds on to feeling overwhelmed. It adds on to the anxiousness, and it adds on to the stress. And getting advice is important. Seeking out help is important, but there is a line there. There's a difference between getting advice and being overwhelmed by absolutely everybody's opinions on what you should do with your life. And the thing is, everybody's situation is different. When you are deciding about something that you want to do, when you are deciding that you want to pursue something in particular, or change courses, or pivot in some type of way, your life is never the same as somebody else's. You may be making the same decision that somebody else has made, but that does not mean that it's going to have the same outcome. It doesn't mean that it's the same circumstance. It doesn't mean that everything is the same, because your life is completely unique. So there are times when you will be moving throughout your life, and you have to understand and make that conscious decision that sometimes you have to ignore everyone to succeed. There are 2 points I'll be making in this video. One is going to be ignoring everybody's opinion, and then the other one is going to be ignoring everyone, period. Now, I'm not saying to ignore your family. I'm not saying to ignore the people that are important to you as a whole, but there are certain things that you may be doing that could be holding you back, and that is what I'm going to be getting into today. So stick around, consider subscribing if you do end up enjoying this video, and if you have any comments or concerns as we go through this whole process, feel free to leave them in the comments below. I want you to stop overly focusing on what everybody else is doing, and rather shift all that focus onto you. When you are listening to what people are doing, when you are listening to your friends' lives, listening to your acquaintances' lives, when you're on social media and you're seeing everybody living up, you're seeing people travel, you're seeing people dating, you're seeing people graduating, and you are over here trying to work on yourself, you're trying to make growth within yourself, those things can become huge distractions. You can start looking at them, and your brain power, all of the energy, all of the attention starts going to them. You start thinking about what they're doing, you start thinking about what they have going on, and you start to think, why don't you have that going on? You must not be in as good of a position, you must not have da 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 da. And that's where I want you to stop. When you are listening to other people's stories, when you're scrolling on social media, when you're getting all this input about other people's lives, hear it, see it, but don't hold on to it. Don't make it such a big part of your life, because at the end of the day, this is your life. You are the person who is in your life. You're having to make decisions for yourself, and when you're overly focused on what everybody else is doing, you begin to limit what you are able to do, because now, instead of focusing on how can you do this, how can you create this goal, how can you make your life better, what's the issue, why are you struggling with this, instead you're looking at what everybody else is doing. You're focused on what everybody else is doing, and without even realizing it, mentally throughout the day, instead of you helping yourself through your thoughts, instead of you serving yourself through your thoughts, instead of looking at what you should be doing, what God wants you to do, instead you're thinking about how you're not living up to what everybody else is doing, how this other person has opportunities that you don't have, how this person's living your dream life and you're not living it. It becomes a distraction, it becomes a blocker in your life, and it leads to one of the biggest and most troublesome symptoms of stuckness, which is complaining. Complaining is something that we all do, and I think that complaining a little bit ain't a problem, but there is a line to complaining. There is a there's a barrier there where it gets to a point where complaining is no longer just talking about what you have going on. It's not just talking about how something didn't go your way, but it becomes something where instead of focusing on the solution, you are now focusing on the problem. And here's the thing, if it was just you in a white room focusing on everything you need to focus on, and you're almost like secluded from everybody else's lives. You don't know what other people necessarily have going on. What you're doing, it most likely wouldn't seem as bad, but because of the fact that, you don't live in a box, you're not secluded, and it's probably not healthy to do that either. Definitely is not healthy to do that either. But because of the fact that it's not just you zoned in on what you have going on, you zoned in on your goals, you zoned in on your life, you zoned in on where you're going. Instead, because you are so focused on everything else, everything becomes like a competition. Everything else becomes like a comparison. Everything else becomes something that you don't measure up to. So your achievements, your goals, where you're going, how you're doing, you start to feel worse about it all instead of feeling pushed to improve. So recenter yourself when you are feeling that. Recenter yourself when you're going through that. When you recognize that you are doing it in the first place, when you start to go off into la la land and you just start thinking about what everybody else is doing, take a moment to recenter yourself. Remind yourself, this is your life, not theirs. They are not the focus. What they got going on is none of your business. If you see something and you wish that was you, use that energy to then think about how you can make it happen in your own life instead of focusing so much on them. Because the comparison can lead you to not grinding as hard. It can lead you to not focusing on what you need to be focusing on. It can affect your performance, which then will affect your outcome. If you're thinking about how everybody else is doing better than you, if you're thinking about how you're behind, you most likely won't work as hard where you're at. And because you're not focusing as much on yourself and your goals and your output, you start to slack. I do have a whole video specifically on comparison, so if that's something that you struggle with, I highly recommend watching that. But as for now, please be careful with the comparison. The next thing is being careful in ignoring some of people's inputs, okay? Sometimes you just have to ignore what people are saying to you because everybody has their own life, everyone has their own experiences. But here's the thing. Your life is very different than other people's lives. There are many times where people will come into your bubble and they will not ask questions. They will not seek knowledge about you, what you have going on, your life, your circumstances, or how you feel. And they will just say whatever. Now, sometimes people do this by accident because they're just not consciously aware of their lack of knowledge about you. Sometimes people feel like they already know enough and they're actually genuinely trying to help you. But here's the thing, and this is something that's really important that I recently learned from Jim Rohn. I highly recommend listening to his seminars, but it doesn't matter who's giving you the bad information. It's still bad information. It doesn't matter if this person had good intent. It doesn't matter if this person had bad intent. It doesn't matter if this person just simply did not care. Bad information is bad information, and that's just that. And you have to be careful of what you take in, because whatever you take in and whatever you listen to, regardless on who it came from, you're going to have to live with the results. You're going to have to live with the outcomes from the decisions based off of that information that you got. Now, this is where I say to be careful. I know for me, there are times where I struggle when people give me bad advice. Understanding that that's not because the person always has bad intent. They just may not know enough about you. They may not know enough about your circumstances, about who you are as a person. They may not be aware of the bad advice that they are giving out. They may literally just be so unaware. And it gets to a point where you just have to ignore it. You literally just have to ignore it. There are people who will tell you all sorts of things. I have been given some advice that was questionable at the very least. It was very questionable. I can't even say it on this. It was so bad. Anyways, the point is that there are times where you literally just have to ignore it. You have to put your head down, focus on what you're doing, and not pay attention to anything that person just told you. Because not getting angry, but rather having discernment is what's going to help you. Because there are always going to be people that are going to give you bad advice. There are always going to be people that are going to mislead you, purposefully or not on purpose. And you cannot stop that from happening. But what you can stop is you taking it in, you accepting it, you applying it to your life, you making decisions upon it. When you are making life decisions, when you are coming up with the new things that you want to happen in your life, when you have found something new about yourself, when you have created a new goal, when you're about to make a big decision, it's common for you to want to talk to people about it. And that is okay. Make sure that you're talking to the right people about it. Don't share it with everybody, because then you're more likely to get poor advice that can discourage you, and I wouldn't want that. But when you're making these big decisions, you can have a lot of input, and you can have a lot of unwelcomed input. And so filter it. I highly recommend testing it and filtering it, and understanding that not everyone has the same goals as you. So if somebody hasn't done what you are wanting to do, they most likely won't be able to give as good of advice. And sometimes they won't be able to give good advice, period, if they have not done what you want to do. Some people, they gave up on what they wanted to do. They wanted to do something, they gave up, and maybe you're wanting to do the same thing or something very similar. And so they're pushing those same aspects, or they're pushing that same mindset onto you. And so having discernment and understanding that there's some information, there's some things that you just need to ignore. Don't get mad about it. Don't, go off on that person all the time. But just say, you know what? I'm going to take it on the chin. That was really bad advice, but I'm just going to have to move forward without listening to that. I'm just going to have to move forward and make my own decision in regard to this, or go to somebody else and get advice, or listen to a different set of advice that you had gotten previously. And there's some things that I also want to add to these things. First, I highly recommend you journaling out your emotions so that you can even later okay, let me back up. It's good to get out your emotions through journaling, but it's also good because you can go back and see where you once were. You can go back and see how you have grown. And sometimes you literally cannot see how much you have grown until you look back. Because if you're looking at the same thing, for example, if you think back to, let's say, 10 years ago, you may not think just by memory alone that you looked all that different. Like when I think back to me being in middle school, I literally imagine me being the exact same, like literally looking the exact same. And I look at pictures, I'm like, I of course did not look the exact same all those years ago. But that's what I think, because I've just always seen myself. The growth hasn't been significant because I've always just seen myself. There was never a day where I looked one way and a day that I looked different. But when I look back at other photos, that's how I see. And so it's the same thing with journaling. You have made this progress, and it hasn't been like always like a light switch where you can just say, oh, yesterday I was one way and today I'm this way. Sometimes it's over time. Sometimes it happens. I'm trying to find the word, but I'm kind of forgetting. But it happens over time. And so looking back can encourage you so that you can see that you actually have made way more growth than what you thought that you did. The next thing that I want to bring up is kind of circling back to that comparison. When you are comparing yourself, I want you to remember that you're sitting here working and other people are partying. And it can seem like this person has their life together because they're able to do A, B, and C, but you really don't know their situation. It can look more fun on the outside, but that doesn't mean in the long run that they are going to be in a better position than you. And it's not like what position they're in really matters. The only thing that matters is what position you're in and if you are where you want to be. But I say this to say that you don't know somebody's life, so don't try to emulate their life. Focus on your life. Focus on what you have going on. Figure out your goals and pursue them. Don't try to just copy what somebody else is doing because it seems like they have it easier. It seems like their life is better. It seems like this or that, because that's not your life. That's not what you truly want, and you don't know what they have going on. And to add on top of this, when you are comparing yourself to people, if you're comparing yourself to people that are doing exactly what you want to do, you have to understand that some of those people have been, majority of the people that you're looking at most likely have been in the game for way longer than you. And here's the kicker. You may not know that they're in the game way longer than you. I remember I was looking at this one YouTuber. I was like, dang, he is so good. He is so much better than me. And then he did an interview one time and he mentioned how he had started 2 other YouTube channels and deleted both of them. He had posted on both of them. His videos weren't doing good on both of them. And he had full on deleted the entire channel, not once, but twice, before he started to dedicate himself and not delete the third channel. So you may not really know the backstory. Just because people don't have their whole life laid out, just because people don't have their whole history, their whole career laid out for you to see, doesn't mean that it's not there. And you may be at a loss because you're kind of trying to gauge where you should be at, but you can't really gauge where you should be at because sometimes, again, people don't always have everything out there. There are some things that built them, that built their career, that built their channel, that built their finances, that they may not want to be out there anymore. Imagine your most cringiest moment in history. That cringy moment for some people is documented and they decide to take it down. They decide not to talk about it because though it helped them, though it got them through tough times, it may just not be something that they want to talk about. And so, yes, it could leave you at a disadvantage because you are building your foundation. You are at the very beginning placing stones for what will soon become your home. But you just don't realize that you're in the same spot that they used to be. So keep that in mind when you are comparing yourself to people. There are a couple of things that I do want you to put into practice now that you have all this understanding, and one of those is to stay off of social media. Taking a little social media break, if you take a full-on social media break, like cold turkey for an entire week, or however long you want, 2 weeks, month, I know that a month cold turkey off of social media is really great. I did it at one point. It was a 30-day cold turkey social media challenge, and it's really tough for like the first 2 weeks, but then after that it gets so much easier. I highly recommend doing that. Or you could do like a soft social media cleanse where you just eliminate certain social media platforms, or you eliminate how much you're on them, or even the pages that you visit, the content that you visit on them. Doing this can help cleanse your mind. It can help take you back from all of the external hoopla. It can help you from not seeing as many people's opinions, not getting everybody's input on everything. It can also help you with just having a refresher, having a cleanse. So I highly recommend doing that. The next thing that I highly recommend doing is writing everything down that you are feeling. I did mention journaling, but I want you to write down how you are talking to yourself, because when you write it down and when you just generally are able to address it and acknowledge it, you may see that you are actually taking on a lot of the negative things that people have told you. You can see that this isn't a thought that innately was in you. This isn't a thought that you usually would have thought about yourself, but now you're telling yourself it, and you didn't even realize that you were telling yourself it. And where did it come from? It came from something that somebody told you. And then I would also say to then figure out what the best method is to deal with that. Everybody has their own thing of healing, of overcoming. If it is reading a book, reading multiple books, listening to seminars, going on YouTube and listening to what a therapist has to say about it, or getting therapy, or talking to a mentor or a parent or a friend. But acknowledge what it is and then try different things. If you don't already know what's going to help you, try different things to help you overcome those negative emotions, overcome those negative thoughts, overcome what people are telling you, and learning how to not allow that to affect you. That is definitely something that I have been working on for a while now, so be patient with yourself. And the final thing is to have some appreciation for yourself. Go back to the journal, as we have been there a lot in this video, and write down things that you did good. Write down things that have brought you even closer to where you want to be in your life, brought you even closer to your accomplishments. Did you work on a project today? Did you respond to a specific email? Did you write that page of the book that you're creating? Did you post that video? Did you film this? Did you speak to this person? Did you apply for a job? Get the interview? Do the interview? There's so many things. So write that down and realize that you are doing good. You are making progress. And I know that I said that was the final thing, but I will also say to fill your time up with things that are going to feed you, even if it's 10 minutes. Instead of spending that 10 minutes on TikTok, spend that 10 minutes doing something that is actually going to help you, watching a video that is beneficial to you, reading that book, listening to that seminar, taking that class. At least spend 10 minutes doing it. And if you can, do it in the morning to start your day off great. Make sure to build your fairy tale instead of focusing all your time on reading somebody else's fairy tale book. That concludes today's video. I really do hope that you enjoyed. Please consider subscribing if you did. Please take care of yourself physically, mentally, spiritually, and financially. And I will see you in the next one. Bye.